Welcome back everyone. In this slide, we'll be discussing about rendering lists. When you have a list of items to show to your users in plain HTML, you'd have to literally hardcode everything, right? Now, this might be tedious at times, and when you need to update it, you'd have to go over again to delete it, to rewrite it, and all those stuff. Now, in React.js, to do this is as simple as having an array of the elements you want to list out. Then you'd have to loop through it using the .map method, which is a JavaScript syntax that allows you to map across any provided data and construct your HTML files or your HTML syntax on the fly. Now in this code here, we are looking at still the app.js file where we have an array of blogs. Inside of the array, we have two elements, each of them having IDs, names, and content. Now in our class name div, where we are going to render our output, we are first of all having the hello world that we used earlier on. Then we are going to loop through the blogs array dot map. Notice the curly braces that began it. This is to allow us include JavaScript codes inside of our React app. Okay. Now dot map, and at each instance that we are looping through the blogs array, we have access to each of the elements as blog. Okay, so it's always right if you're trying to loop through an array, this has to be the plural, while the element that we're using has to be the single format. Now we are going to be returning a whole HTML syntax, and by so doing, you're using the return keyword to return a div tag that has a class name of block container. Assuming in the nearest feature you'd like to style your block containers and everything, so you include the class of that particular div. Now this key is very important as it helps React keep track of each of the elements in your list that you're rendering. So there is no duplicate key, which might cause an error when you're trying to delete a particular item from the list. If they have the same keys, it's going to give issues trying to delete it. But since we are making use of the IDs, which by default are meant to be unique numbers, then each of these elements are going to be having their separate identifications. Now, inside of the div, we also are going to have another div for the blog name, which is going to contain our blog.name. Now, remember that I said that at every loop in this particular array, we have access to each of the elements here as blog. So to access this object, we can simply do blog.name to grab the name, and also blog.content to grab the content. Once we are done and we preview this on the browser, we'll get to see something like this. React.js, George Ukwebu, Lorem Ipsum, Alida School, George Ukwebu, Lorem Ipsum. Now, in our next video, we'll get to learn how to convert this into reusable components so that instead of looping this here, we'll have our dedicated blog container as a reusable component, and we'll get to call it and reuse it anytime and anywhere we want.